a senior archaeologist, paleoethnobotanist. Many of you may know me. I'm an archaeologist in residence now at USD as a volunteer, and I'm also doing some consulting and different things like that, trying to keep the bills coming in and being paid. This presentation has a little bit to do about my trips from USD study abroad into the field down there, and then how some of that, studying that culture, led to a comic book being developed. So as you go you're going 11 miles by bus, or 11 hours by bus, up into the Andes Mountains, and then you come through these rolling hills like this that look kind of like Rohan from Lord of the Rings. It's kind of neat stuff. There's these big boulders up on and these are like hundreds and hundreds of feet up. This is like over 10,000 feet. And you get to the tops of these rolling hills, and you come to this pass, and this is Cahuche Tunnel, one of the world's highest tunnels. It is 14,816 feet above sea level. And you go through that tunnel, and Dr. John Rick would always say, he was the professor that leads the digs at Chavin de Huanter from Stanford, and he'd say, when I think you go through that tunnel, you're time traveling. You go to this whole another eco zone, and he's like, I don't even know if this place exists when I go back to the States. But you come to this other side of the mountain, and it's just beautiful down there. You got all these winding roads that just go all around and wind down to the bottom of the valley into the lower eco zone where the plants grow. And there's a shrine right there as you come out of that tunnel. And then you start seeing this as you descend. There'll be some bricks placed on the wall around the edges of the roads, and then you look down, and it's hundreds of foot drops down into that valley, but you'll see this whole patchwork of quilt like that I thought was amazing. Just, you got corn and potatoes growing up there, and beans and other quinoa and other kind of different plants that farmers are growing for their own subsistence, and they sell some of the excess to get some of the western goods too from the bigger towns like Juarez, the next mountain range over. Then you come on down to this little city, and this is Chavin itself, and this is up on top of this mountain where they had a big cross displayed. And right here, this is Plaza de Armas y Catedral de Chavin de Huanter, so that's right there in the top right. That's the Catholic Church that's kind of been in this region, I don't know, for a couple hundred years, I believe. And then that's Plaza de Armas, the green area with all the trees growing. That's where people kind of gather. If there's ever a protest or anything that goes on around town that may upset people, they'll gather there and communicate and talk to one another and try to figure out solutions. Right here you can see a traditional Highland dress woman. She's got a kind of like a top leather hat on, and kind of traditional garb. They like some red jackets quite a bit, and then dark green skirts, and they usually have leggings on, and then some low shoes. And right down this street, you walk down all the way down this street to our hostel from the temple when we go and observe at the temple Chavin de Huanter. And that place on the left with the art on the wall, that was a shaman, a Peruvian shaman that was working with Westerners, kind of like as a, I don't know, you'd say like a Western kind of New Age religion type shaman, where they're bringing people, Westerners, down to Chavin in Peru, and they're introducing them to San Pedro tea and different things like that, and they're rolling around to New Age music, and they're in the yard right next to where we're excavating, so that was kind of wild. This is one of my favorite fruits down there. It's called aguamanto. Or no, this is chirimoya. So this will look like a little dragon egg. It's got like these green scales that look like marks on it, and then it's got big black seeds that are about a ½ inch long, and like if you chew on one of those, you're gonna break teeth. But the only thing I can think of that this reminds me of, it tastes like cherry vanilla yogurt. It was just really neat fruit I never had before. And this is Aguimanto. This is a similar, it has an exact same plant and or same family. It's called ground cherries in the northern plains. And American Indian people gather it for stews and different things, and it's bitter and they collect it in the winter time. But in Peru, this grows at different times of the year and it tastes sweet like a cherry, so they'll put it in candy, and it's a really neat plant. But I mean, it has two different flavors and it's two different uses in North and South America. So some of the locals, they'd grow guinea pigs. They'd raise guinea pigs not as pets but for a food source. Back before the Spanish arrived and brought like chickens, pork, cows, and goats and things like that. Excuse me. The only protein source they had in the Andes was guinea pigs and llamas or alpacas, and you didn't always want to eat all your llamas and alpacas because that's your pack animal that's taken you and your family or your goods to market or whatever you're using to travel around the Andes. This is one of those little buggers on a plate. This is half a cuy. He was fried up in a pan. That we'd serve with some barley and some potatoes and lettuce and some ají pepper sauce. So people ask, what does it taste like? I don't know, like greasy chicken maybe, greasy dark meat chicken, but there's hardly any meat on it. So I always tell the story of some of the local little boys would kind of freak some of us out because they'd be chewing on the guinea pig heads and they'd suck the eyes out and throw the skulls to the dogs, and the dogs would just chomp them up and there'd be nothing left at all. If you ever see a llama do this to you, put its ears back, watch out, it might be spit or bite at you. They're not very nice to people that don't know them. This is the temple itself, Temple Chavin de Huanter. This is where the main temple was. On this side, I guess I got a pointer. Towards this direction, there's a circular sunken plaza, and they think there used to be priests that would come out in possibly colorful clothing. They'd come out on these platforms, and there was an entrance into the temple from here, and then tunnels inside that would lead out to these. These are about, 10 to 20 feet above the ground level. And then I think they would lead ceremonies up there to the people that would gather down in the sunken plaza. So this next slide, this is that black and white portal of the temple, and those little nooks are right there and there. And this is the sunken plaza. And I think this is connected to some of the inner workings. There's canal systems that would run water. There's a river that runs down here, and there's a river that runs along like here. And somehow they had engineered this land so they could have sound effects at some of these events. So the water would channel through these canals that were built underground, lined with stone, and then they'd have, by the circular plaza up here, they'd have little like tubes that would make whistling and humming sounds when they could open certain canals and just make a really loud water effect that would have been awe-inspiring too to some of these people. But scholars think that a lot of people would gather down here for religious celebrations and different pilgrimages, because there's a lot of evidence that people from the Andes and the east coast of South America came to this place as a pilgrimage site. There's tenon heads. These are all to give the effect of faces floating on the side of the building. So they have a tenon joint that's plugged into the back of the stonework there, and the temple used to be lined with them all the way around. You can see some empty facets where they used to be, but they've fallen or been stolen or been broken off. This is the only one that still remains.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. And then this is another picture of it at a different angle. Here's the sunken in cheeks, some nasal drainage, which is indicative of using this Vilca seed along with the Wachuma San Pedro tea that they'd use in some of their religious ceremonies, and then the anthropomorphized jaguar teeth that are on some of the faces and some sunken eyes. And then there it is, again close from another angle, and then there's the sunken cheek and the jaguar-like teeth and ear spools. And here's some more. This shows the nasal drainage. That's been ethnographically observed when Vilca seeds are taken. It gives an effect like the chemical legal drug DMT, and it also enhances visual effects of the Wachuma or San Pedro tea. So when people would crush and grind the Vilca seeds that they find in the Amazon, and then they'd sniff them, and then they'd have nasal drainages, and then their eyes roll back in their heads, and their cheeks get sunk in. So this is some indirect evidence of them using what they call an entheogen, which is a mind-altering plant substance. And here's some more examples. And you go from more like humanoid into more like animalistic kind of features. Here more list of human transition kind of into a jaguar or power animal. And this is another indicator that they were using the Wachuma, San Pedro. It grows all over native up in the Andes there. And then this artifact was found, I think, in the 80s or 90s. But it had these eyebrows of the San Pedro cactus growing from the eyes, but they didn't really know what that meant until they found some other artifacts later. I'll talk about that in a moment. This is the tail of this. They have some new research on. Might be some new articles coming out on this. One of my colleagues are kind of in on this project. But this was found toppled near that temple site, and on the images that are there, you can see like a caiman. Down here is you have like peppers, peanuts, akira, and so you have all these manioc, you have all these different little plants and different little creatures. This Andean cross, that's a cross section of a San Pedro cactus. Then you have all these other little priest-like features that you see, and then the strombus and spondylus shells, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's just a diagram of everything that's on the tail of this. So it shows plants that don't exist in the Andes, but this sculpture is up in the Andes, but it's showing plants and animals from the Amazon basin, which is like days and days journeys to the east. And this is what it would look like in 3D colorized. So you see these little dudes and plants growing, and there's some little plants and things like that. And the catacombs in the temple look something like this. They probably were sensory deprivation areas where people would go in, gather, or have some kind of vision quest. That is what my personal opinion is. This is a picture of the Lanzone that's in the center of that temple. It's another sacred sculpture. It's a World UNESCO site too, this Chavin de Huanter. And they call this the Lanzone, that last picture I showed. So he is a cosmic kind of balancer. He's called the knife in the earth. So one hand's held down to the ground, and the other one's holding the heavens up above us. And then here's a close-up picture I got with it. So that was before they closed it off to all tourists, so you can't really go back there into that tunnel anymore. And then here is us. The temple's across. There's a river that runs right down there. You can see the temple's right over here. We dug across the river in La Banda. Yeah, those are some of the family that live on this plot. I think this was your unit, wasn't it, Alec? With that hearth thing in the wall. And then there's a wall. Yeah, I was there with Alec in 2013 in undergrad.
Yep, that was mine.
And then, so that was some really neat architecture, and that's just buried just 2 feet under the surface. Those foundations and walls and hearths and things. There's been a landslide there over the last couple hundred years that's buried some of these ruins. And this was a neat little polished bone corn artifact we found. And this was a really cool artifact because we found this in the unit I was working in about 1.5 meters deep, and Dr. Matt Sayer was taking a carbon sample because we had this nice clod of dirt with about a 2 centimeter carbonized piece of wood, and we wanted a date, so we wanted to get a date. He popped that open, and that perfectly preserved bone pendant was in the dirt clod, so that was pretty fun. And then this is all the pottery we'd find at the site. We'd weigh it, count it. You can see it's just such a menagerie of different types, and there's so many different Peruvian pottery styles. It's just amazing. And then here's some of the obsidian we're finding at the site. That was one of their main stone tool use. And then some more architecture of walls and houses that they're slowly excavating, a couple of units every year. And then this was that unit, that bird pendant came out of the wall right about here. And then we were so excited here because we didn't know there was this huge boulder that was about 4 foot high, and we thought maybe we found some burial chamber because they've never found any burials up in Chavin. They don't know what they did with the dead. This is a neat lake up there, and if you ever go to Chavin, Laguna Conoca Cocha, and this is Nevado Pastori Mountain, so it's really pretty. It's just a barren like landscape until you get to the foothills of the mountains, and then it changes to snow. And this is power running up to Huaraz and Chavin, and they're running power all the way up there. And this was one of the reasons they finally decided that little tendon head I showed you with the cactus eyebrows, this is what gave them finally the indication that it was direct evidence of San Pedro cactus use, is they found the part of this relief stone sculpture. They found this, they thought it was just going to be a straight staff, because there's a lot of staff god deities with corn stalks and different things in Andean and Wari and iconography. So they found the roots to that, so they thought, oh, well, must be cactus then and not a staff. So here's what that art looks like. And you can see the Medusa-like snake hair and the condor taloned feet and hands and the jaguar teeth and the eyes rolled back in the head. And these parts kind of look like the land zone itself. And then this is the Medusa. They call that the Medusa. And they kind of think maybe these are deities. And here this holding the strombus and spondylus shells, which were sacred to them. They'd make patutu trumpets out of them to start ceremonies and to give offerings to the Mother Earth and Mama Pacha. You see more of these snakes. But interesting, this is 1000 BC, and even a little before, so it's kind of interesting that there's a correlation kind of snakes with Medusa and the Greeks and the Romans, and then over here in South America you have the same kind of Medusa thing going on. Here's the tutu. They'd carve it. You can see that iconographic eye and some other the shapes that reoccur, the circles and swirls. Here's some strombus shells that were excavated that were left as offerings. Sometimes they find these in abandoned empty chambers. And then there's some more art with a used one that's offering. You stick your hand in that hole, blow through that, and then you can manipulate your hand to make the trumpet make different low frequency sounds. This was found in Bolivia, I believe, but they think it's Chavin because it has this Andean cross on it all over, that they think might have something to do with Chavin itself. So all this research I did in undergrad and grad school kind of led to an idea for a comic book. One of my friends were doing an anthology comic, which was going to be the Space Diner, called Dottie's Diner, where the gods hang out at there are little short stories, and the gods hang out at this diner and try and watch over their patrons on Earth or wherever they are. So that's the first page of our little snippet. It was just a doodle my buddy did, and I thought we should have that at the beginning of the comic. So this is the first page. They're sitting in Dottie's Diner. Here's some tardigrades we put in the window floating around, some stars out there, and they're drinking out of that cup like that artifact. And yeah, they have the different colored hair. One is this is the staff god deity, and this is the shell deity. And then we focus in on a lamp on kind of a menu item on the table, and that the gods can zoom in down on their people in the village. And then I tried to write it so there wasn't any modern things in the comic, so it's all kind of authentic. Here's that little cat mortar cup again. He's making up a tutu shells here on the shelf. This is kind of how the Andean households were kind of structured. And then here's a shaman that comes in, and he finishes the patutu in time for the festival, and then he goes on a little adventure. And then this is what the temple looks like. This is a circular plaza. Here's the sunken plaza. Here's the main temple. And then here's the circular plaza. They think there was tunnels and canals. People would rise up out of here. The people over here in the sunken plaza would have been able to see all these events. Probably smoke, fire, stuff at night. Beautiful, probably a lot of colorful clothing and different things. Because they have found feathers from the Amazon in this area. And then I got lucky enough to try to help with cleaning some of the vegetation off the architecture, so that was kind of fun. And then here, there's the last page of the comic. If you're interested, I brought a couple copies. That's what those are down in the end on the $5 auction for the silent bids. And then Jalala comes out, sees a wiry, skinless, wiry old man before him, Tinku, and then so we wrote the Quechua word for community and throughout the comic. And then you can see the San Pedro shaman there, and the Medusas there. We even got a little future project. I put a little guy back here I call Stay at Home Jesus. I might want to do with a comic someday. So there's the first appearance of Stay at Home Jesus. And then there's the SDAS ad we put in the comic too. So that's about all I got. Here's the comics.